Kigali in Rwanda, where the Speaker of the National Assembly, Inteview is leading a high-level parliamentary delegation to attend the 145th Inter-Parliamentary Union Assembly, which is currently taking place from the 10th to the 16th of October in Kigali, Rwanda. The Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP is one of the senior leaders who are part of the delegation. She is now joining us via Zoom platform to talk to us a little bit more about her work, and particularly a session that she will be attending this afternoon, which is of the Forum of Women Parliamentarians. Deputy Chairperson, thank you very much for making the time, and welcome to this afternoon session.
Good afternoon, Sibo, and good afternoon to the viewers of Channel 408 Parliamentary TV. We are indeed from Rwanda, Kigali in Rwanda, one of the beautiful places that I've ever seen. And we have just concluded the opening event of the 145th Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union that was addressed by the President of Rwanda, President Paul Kagame. So now, as the delegates, we've got different responsibilities at the Inter-Parliamentary Union. And the focus, particularly in terms of the term, this year will be on issues of gender equality and also on how to make Parliament gender responsive and how to ensure gender equity in our parliaments. So also, one of the main topics otherwise is the issue on how to make sure that governments respond to the issues of human trafficking, particularly women and children in areas where violence are prone. So we are going to have an event now as the women parliamentarians, the 34th session of the Women Parliamentary Forum, and we are going to have discussions around the two topics as I've mentioned already. Should I continue?
It's fine, Deputy. I just quickly want to come in there. You spoke about the draft resolution that is on the agenda of the 145th IPU Assembly, the one that is dealing with human trafficking in particular. Talk to us a little bit more about South Africa's input, because we know, as you indicated earlier, that the Forum for Women Parliamentarians will be discussing this issue at length in order to ensure that the resolution itself has got a gender perspective to it as well. Talk to us about the South African position on in terms of the issue that is being discussed with regards to human.
Yes, before I go to the South African position, I think it's worth mentioning that the country of Rwanda, in terms of women representation within their parliament, is #1 in the world. I have just recently done some research to look into that, and indeed it is confirmed that Rwanda is #1 in the world with regards to making sure that there is female representation within the parliament. So it is just really befitting that we are in Rwanda this time around under the themes that is being discussed. So in terms of the input to the resolution, particularly from the side of South Africa, we have just requested that in the draft resolution, they should really reflect on the historical kind of resolutions and conventions that have been taken, not only by the United Nations, but by other bodies that have got interest in this specific topic, and that we should reflect more upon that, so that we shouldn't bring the resolution as if it is just coming out of a vacuum. And furthermore, what we also want as South Africans is that there should be more emphasis on the human rights issue. And although this is reflecting on parliaments and the role that they can play, but also on the human rights issue, because eventually human trafficking, and particularly women and girls that are being victims of this specific atrocity, they are, in actual fact, it is a violation of their own human rights. But also, what we want more emphasis on as South Africa is on the issue of the fact that it is gender violence, it is sexual violence, and all the different kind of violence that women are experiencing, not only in war-torn areas, but also in areas where you find that there is really an escalation of trafficking in persons, particularly women and girls. So, and also the fact that we need, in terms of the human rights aspect, we need to address the issue of poverty, because it is issues like poverty that make women to become victims of trafficking, but also the issue of education and skills development, which is a very important part to make sure that if we educate our girl children, if we educate women, we will have given them the skills to be able to provide for themselves, but also the skills to defend themselves. And that is the kind of discussions that we hope will transpire from our input within the session of the Forum of Women Parliamentarians.
Now, when we reflect a little bit more, Deputy Chair, on the issue of migrant women and girls, what systems does Parliament or the government of the day obviously have in place to ensure that women and girls, obviously who are migrants, are coming from other countries already? When they come into a foreign country that is not originally their home, obviously there's a lot of vulnerabilities that we can expect. Issues to access to health, issues that relate to access to healthcare. We spoke about access to economic opportunities and so forth. How does the South African government ensure that those who are legally in the country, those women and girls who are legally in the country, do have adequate access to opportunities, and also, in terms of healthcare facilities and so forth, and all the other related that they will need to live a high quality life?
Maybe we must start from the negative part of it. It already, we know that just generally a person that is like seen as an immigrant already is South Africans are very much on the back foot with regards to the fact that there is a notion that want to say that these people are coming to take up our opportunities, taking up our jobs, taking up our space and so on. There is that notion. Now you can imagine just generally the person, and mainly when we speak about the first person, we will speak about the men that come here and sometimes bringing their families. And that is where the women and the girl children, or the children, will also sometimes be ones that will be brought into any country, but South Africa in particular, and particularly with the notion that there is that feeling that these people are here to take away from us that belongs to us. So you can imagine if those that are in a position to defend themselves are actually going through that specific notion. What about women and girls that is seen as vulnerable ordinarily, because already they are taken away from where they generally reside. They are in a foreign country, and women have got their own specific issues that they need to deal with. And then you will find it's much they are much more prone to issues like prostitution, to issues like abuse, and even the issue of trafficking is coming from the fact that this is displaced individuals. And even if South Africa, with all its regulations and all its policies, but the issue that we have already long ago identified is an issue of implementation, an issue of policing, an issue of making sure that our own policies and our positions that we take, even our legislation is being implemented, become a challenge, a serious challenge for these specific individuals. Because, like I've already said, there is already that attitude. And if, in fact, the issue of patriarchy is also playing a role, because men just find it easier to survive, while it is not necessarily the case for women and girls. And I think, although South Africa has got many laws, many policies and things, I think on this platform we need to discuss it, to actually share best practices as countries, and as parliaments in particular, to see how do we address the specific issues. So it's very difficult to say the South African position is this, but we also know that this is a vulnerable group of people. So even if South Africa have got provision, but how do they access that provision? And I think from this IPU and more emphasis on this issue, but also in terms of the work that we as a South African Parliament have been doing around the Women's Charter, going around consulting women, going to provincial governments and all of that. we need to begin to have a stronger stance on the issue of migrant women, but particularly those that are legally in our country, because I think honestly South Africa can do better in making sure that we respond to the issues of immigrants, particularly women and girl children, because we know what the needs of women are, and it's definitely different from the needs of men. And unfortunately, Africa has got a history of girl children being deprived from education, being deprived from economic opportunities. And Africa has got a history. So those that are coming to South Africa is in sort of economic opportunities as well as education and so on. So although we have got very progressive legislation and very progressive policies and so on, it is about time that we must sit around the table and actually involve this that are in our country legally, just to understand better how do they experience, what is their experience in our country. So I mean, we can say this is the solutions, but what are they saying? What do they feel is the issues that will actually assist them to be part of the Rainbow Nation, or to be part of those that want to strive for a better life for themselves.
So when we reflect on the importance of this resolution, and that it will, of course, be adopted by the IPU, by the 145th IPU Assembly, obviously it just adds another layer to the plethora of policies and legislation that we already have in South Africa. And that doesn't even speak to the issue of our porous borders in South Africa. And research, a lot of research that has been done, academics and scholars, has found that our borders are extremely porous. And when we're talking about human trafficking, what will the delegation do? And that is from a perspective of processing all of the commitments that has been made on the Interparliamentary Union platform, to ensure that this issue in particular, recognizing that it forms part, it's just another strut, it's just another layer on top of the plethora of existing policies and legislation that are not being properly implemented. What is the next step with regards to ensuring that this clarion call, which really is, it is really repeating an issue that has been a long-standing challenge for women and girls around the country, which is similarly, obviously, women in South African migrant girls and women are experiencing the same. So what is the next step with regards to processing this resolution effectively, Honorable Deputy Chairperson?
Fortunately, Sebo, we as the South African Parliament, we have been putting the issue of women very high on our agenda, and particularly with the processes that we have done in terms of assessing our gender machinery, in terms of making sure that there is a response to gender-based violence, there is a response to other issues that is already on the agenda. So fortunately, we have already that platform. So the issue of immigration, and particularly also the issue of people from foreign countries that is in South Africa, is one more issue that we need to give focused attention to. And I think it will be very easy for us as Parliament to include this in our current agenda that we are already pursuing. But also, we will have to make sure that through the structures of Parliament, like the Women's Caucus, we need to escalate this issue to the SADC PF, so that the Parliamentary Forum, the Women's Parliamentary Forum of SADC, should assist us in making sure that we have a comprehensive response to this issue. Because we as South Africa alone won't be able to solve this issue. We will have to work hand in glove with the SADC countries, so that all of us can be able to have a comprehensive and a common approach to the issues of women, of human trafficking, particularly with regards to women and girls. And so that is why I'm saying, for us to go back and to consolidate on the positions that are being resolved on here in the Interparliamentary Union, but also to make sure that we work with our SADC grouping. And even if we can escalate it to the geopolitical group of Africa, so that we can begin to have a common approach to this issue. Because in the end, South Africa as a country are receiving mostly people from other African countries. So we need to have a common approach and a common response as Africa, SADC first, and then Africa to the specific issues. So I think we've got a platform now to begin to continue discussing the same issues so that we can get to a point where we can say this is Africa's position and this is how we are going to approach it. And I am sure that will really assist us to make sure that, because even if you hear people from European countries speaking, mostly the immigrants or the migrants are coming from Africa, particularly from Northern Africa, particularly where there are wars or there are just violence generally. So I think if Africa can take a position that is common and we put that common position on the agenda of the Interparliamentary Union, I think that will assist us and also make sure that European countries and other countries begin to see that we are very serious to make sure that we generally address this issue, and then eventually we will be able to have a response to the human trafficking issue.
Indeed, Deputy Chair, you speak about the need for further engagement within the SADC region and, of course, across the African continent as well, and particularly also with regards to formulating the appropriate legislative, overarching legislative framework to ensure that all of the countries, not only in the SADC region, but across the African continent, have got a common approach, which is actually, it's the correct way to move forward to ensure that there is a unified approach when it comes to dealing with these matters. But moving on to the issue of the second subject matter, which will be on the agenda of the Forum of Women Parliamentarians this afternoon, which will be dealing with matters relating to issues of gender-based violence, misogyny, sexist intimidation of women parliamentarians. What is South Africa's contribution with regards to key issues that must be taken into account when it comes to dealing with issues of sexism and misogyny and related matters, that discriminatory behaviors from other members of Parliament?
Fortunately, as you know, South Africa has been since 2016 part and parcel of the research that has been done with regards to how safe parliaments are for female parliamentarians and so on. So already we've got a report, and we are also part of the IPU process to address the issues of making parliament safer for women. And I think not from the top of my head immediately, but I have read that report and I have seen there are many proposals as to how it can be addressed. But also one specific issue, that is the role of male counterparts within the parliament, as to how they will assist us to address the issue. Unfortunately, I was just saying to someone today, if you look at the makeup of the executive as well, I'm speaking about the executive of parliament, you find it is now incrementally that you begin to see that our speakers is women. But it is mostly already coming from this patriarchal background in most of the areas, that presidents are men, speakers are men, and unfortunately, it took us some time to actually engender the discussion within parliaments. And fortunately for us in the South African Parliament, we have got this proposals that we put into the IPU research proposals, and that will be actually assisting us to make sure that parliamentarians in their own right or in their own actions begin to address the issues, because you know in that report it was clear it's not only MPs that are suffering the issue of harassment or sexual harassment or whatever. It's also female staff members, female managers, and that is why I'm saying that need a comprehensive response. Fortunately, we've got some proposals that will go into the resolutions, and that will be assisting us as South Africa to be able to the prevalence of such, to be able to address it. And we can't say we are not prone to that kind of of situation, because in our report it came out. And also we had to actually begin to put in measures in place to make sure that there can be disclosure, but not only disclosure, but also a response, a common response to the issues that is actually making it unsafe for female parliamentarians, as well as the staff and management, female management within the parliamentary the legislative sector, let me put it like that, because it is across the sector, it is not necessarily in a specific parliament where it is actually prevalent.
Now, zoning in, Deputy Chair, to the issue of patriarchy. We know that patriarchy is very much deeply embedded, not only in the South African context, as part of the social fabric of the country. It also finds expression across all platforms, even in Parliament, as a platform where it is supposed to be a space of freedom, true freedom and true democracy, and self-expression. And women often find it very difficult to talk about issues of harassment, simply because there is no mechanism in place. So how do we build confidence in women as well with regards to the process that then follows? Because very often when we talk about secondary victimization, it's the same thing that happens in the courts as well. So very often women are afraid to come forward, to come and talk about what they have experienced because of the fear of retribution. They are afraid that they might be victimized for speaking out, especially when there's the unequal power relations between the person who is the victim of this act of violence or
abuse or harassment.
Or harassment. So what is the way forward in terms of just building the confidence of women? And obviously that also speaks to the issue of confidence in the system. Will the system then take the necessary action? Will it be structured in a manner that will deal with these perpetrators in a manner that sends a clear message that these issues, that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated?
I've got two ways in which to respond to that specific issue. And that is, we need to get the buy-in of men, because both men and women are affected by the patriarchal system. Because unfortunately, patriarchy is something that is so rife. And the unfortunate part is that, like you said, like we say sometimes, people want to actually justify, that is the word that I'm looking for. They want to justify the issue of a patriarchal society, where we are coming from, and they want to actually make us believe that it is, in actual fact, it is not as grave as we want to portray it. But those that are the victims and that are on the receiving end of these patriarchal tendencies, they are the ones that can tell you that it is really to the effect that it has got a very, very negative effect on particularly the female cadre, let me put it like that. Now, you say, how do we address it? First and foremost, we will have to have the buy-in of men, because we can build the systems. We can put, in actual fact, make it possible for women to disclose without being victimized. But you still have this kind of thing, that there is that secondary victimization, that someone can tell you to say, it's fine, you can do whatever you want to. But you understand, I mean, I don't have to expand on that specific part, because we know people will tell you, I had to do it because I was afraid I would lose my position, or I had to do it because I was afraid that this person will victimize me, this person will do this to me and do that to me. Unfortunately, it is a reality. So what we need to do is to put systems in place that will make it possible for women, that will make it possible for victims, and that will make it generally create the atmosphere wherein which all of us can feel safe and be safe and feel and can openly speak about issues that is actually making it very difficult for us to be able to report on issues of victimization, to be able to directly begin to address, to say, but so and so is victimizing me, by virtue of the fact that I'm a woman, I'm experiencing this. So that is why I'm saying we still have a long way to go, but we can make that long way short in making sure that we actually change the mindset of our male, of the male cadre of not only MPs and public representatives, but also managers, but also men in general within the sector. That is what is important.
Every as we conclude, can you just quickly talk to us about what to expect for the rest of the week? We know that there are various other platforms and that will be meetings that will be taking place, standing committees and so forth. And of course, as the convener of the IPU focus group in Parliament, you take responsibility as well for overseeing the arrangements and making sure that everything runs smoothly. Can you just talk to us quickly conclude about what to expect for the rest of the week?
Yeah, for the next few days, today we will be having the forum on women parliamentarians. Tomorrow it will be the forum on youth parliamentarians, but also the governing council. And the governing council will discuss some of the resolutions with regards to this specific topics that are there. And then the assembly will have a debate on the two main topics. There will be a debate, but we will also have the discussion in the Peace and International Standing Committee, as well as in the Committee on Democracy and Human Rights. The issue of climate change will be discussed in the Standing Committee on Sustainable Development. And that is the three where we are mostly participating, the three standing committees where we are mostly participating. But we will also this time around make sure that we have representation on the standing committee on the United Nations. Because as South Africa, we have been actually canvassed to speak about the reform of the United Nations and also to support it from the side of Parliament. That didn't actually pass as an emergency resolution, but we will see how we are going to actually introduce that specific issue. But on the issue of climate change, I mean, Pakistan wanted an emergency resolution, but it wasn't actually, it didn't conform. But fortunately, will be this discussion in the Sustainable Development Standing Committee because it's a very important issue. If you look at around the world, there is this issues of floods and disasters and so on. But even in South Africa, a few months ago, we had a disaster in Durban. I think it was around April. We had a disaster in Durban. And all of those things are attributed to climate change. So there will be that discussion around climate change. So generally, we will be very productive for this week that we will be here, and we have actually made sure that we have representation on all the standing committees in the forum for young parliamentarians as well as in the forum for women parliamentarians, and the speaker will be attending the governing council on behalf of all of us. And henceforth, we also want to make sure that we consolidate the positions of IPU so that we can spread it across the legislative sector within South Africa so that we can begin to give more attention to the specific issues. Thank you.
Listen, thank you very much for all of the insights that you shared with regards to the trip of the IPU delegation of the South African Parliament, led by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mayor Mapisa. We do look forward to having more engagements with you as the week unfolds, as we just so that we can make sure that our viewers at home are kept informed about the work, this high level work that has been done by Parliament. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That is where we have to leave it for now. I am going to pause for a quick insert, and then after this insert, we will continue our conversation with Honorable Madala Ndombela, who will be talking to us about the preparations towards the IPU session.
Recording stopped.
So, kan ek maar gaan.
Memonso. Hello.
Oh, just wait, ne?
Oh, okay. All right. Kupantatin to eh. Anyway, hatlabo. Nakulang mo mo tatak hanti.
Say, how are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay.
Mado, count down.
Just give me
need to let him go eat.
Okay. All right, at least mo ha go sana ako na modumo la kantile nena
No,
mo
yes,
monya.
it's fine.
It's just I'm just checking with the streaming guys. They are fine, I think. I'm going to record, and then Ms. Munso, I'm going to call you and then count from the phone.
Okay.
I'm not with Sibulelo Madu. Countela Sibulelo down. I'm eating the territory now.
All right. Let me record.
Recording in progress.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good afternoon to our viewers at home. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you are still watching Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408. I did indicate earlier that we will be continuing our conversation, and this time around, I will be joined, and I am joined by the House Chairperson for International Relations in the National Assembly, Ntate Madala Ntombela, who will be talking to us a little bit more about what to expect in terms of the overall program of the 145th Interparliamentary Union Assembly. Ntate Ntombela, welcome to this session. And thank you so much for making the time to be with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Wonderful. Just by way of starting our conversation, talk to us about the theme for this session. We know that these topics are normally decided upon prior, but talk to us about the theme for this time around and how important is this current topic of discussion for the SA delegation in particular.
Thank you very much. The overall theme, it's gender equality and gender sensitive parliaments as drivers of change to a more resilient and peaceful world. It is very important because issues of gender across the world are topical, and the issues of gender are very, very sensitive. It is such issues which are seized with us as parliamentarians to make sure that gender sensitivity is taken into consideration at all times across the world and in our country, of course.
Yes. So in your capacity as the House Chairperson for International Relations in the National Assembly, of course, you participate in a lot of decision-making processes around preparations for platforms such as the Interparliamentary Union Assembly. Talk to us about the delegation that is representing the South African Parliament, who comprises the delegation, and how are decisions taken around who should be part of the delegation, particularly from a multi-party perspective.
The delegation which is here is led by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Mapisa Ngakula. Yeah. And amongst us, besides myself, of course, as a chairperson of the IR, in the IR, we have Dr. Lodrich, the member of the DA, the Honorable Shibambu as well, and the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, the Honorable Lucas.
Honorable Lucas, yes.
Yeah, that's a delegation that we have. That is besides the officials that are also assisting us a lot. Indeed. And Laguda as well. She's also here to attend to meetings that relate to issues of gender and so on.
Indeed. What kind of preparations go into organizing a session, or should I rather say attending a session of this magnitude? Because obviously before the South African delegation leaves the country, there's obviously, we would assume that there's a lot of preparations behind the scene work, especially from a content perspective, and ensuring that across the various committees where members will be representing the South African Parliament, that they are going in armed with the relevant information and ensuring that they represent the country position in a manner that speaks to exactly the country's position on specific issues.
Before we leave the country as a delegation, we need to be informed, because there are resolutions. At times it could be resolutions of the past, that were taken in previous meetings. So the delegation has got to be prepared so that we make good impact in terms of the discussions that are going to take place. We are appraised with the processes that will be taking place. We are also appraised with the programs that will be taking place in that particular meeting. So we are always ready to participate in those, and having gone through the preparations, the briefings, and so on. So that's the part that is mainly played by IR division, which makes it possible for us to get the research work on particular topics that are going to take place in the meetings that we envisage.
Indeed. Now, when we look at the magnitude of a session such as the IPU Assembly, which brings together more than 178 member parliaments with their respective delegations, and every time a session of this magnitude is convened, obviously that also significantly contributes towards boosting the economy in terms of just injecting the resources that are coming from the various countries through the various delegations that are in attendance. Has the South African parliamentary leadership given any consideration, and of course, through your influence as the House Chairperson for International Relations, to availing itself to host, as host country, one of the upcoming IPU sessions?
From experience, South Africa has had quite a good experience in terms of hosting big events. Yes. For that matter, the IPU was once held in South Africa in 2008. You would remember, under the auspices of pushing back the barriers of poverty, something of that nature. So it means South Africa is in a position to can hold events of this nature. We have the capacity, we have all what it takes to organize events of this nature. So we are capable.
Indeed. So is there any thought in terms of convening it again, if we look at the last time when it was convened, and also considering that very often the IPU Assembly actually takes place in Switzerland? So is there any thought in terms of making sure that, especially given the current context, our economic, the current shape of our economy in South Africa, obviously that will really contribute towards boosting the economy as well. Is there any consideration in terms of making sure that we are then considered as host country for some of the upcoming sessions? Given
South Africa as an international actor, like I said, having the capacity to do that, it could be taken into consideration. But of course, it's difficult for me to can say it here because it requires the political principles to sit down and take such a decision. But in terms of the capacity and the will, the political will, I think South Africa is there as an international actor. And the impact that we have across the world as a country, I think we are in a good position to hold an IPU or an event of this nature.
Wonderful. Now, as we wind up our conversation, I just quickly want to touch on the duration of the conference. The conference has started yesterday, I believe, or has it started today? What is the duration of the conference? And
the duration of the conference?
Yes.
You mean the duration?
Yes, the duration.
Yeah, the conference started on the 11th and it will end on the 15th.
Okay, so are you, when it comes to resolutions, and I have spoken to Honorable Lucas as well in her capacity as the convener of the IPU focus group. But from your perspective, then what then becomes your role, Honorable Ntombela, in terms of ensuring that the resolutions, the commitments that are made on the IPU Assembly are actually effectively implemented, particularly within the space of the National Assembly?
Yes, we have a responsibility to making sure that resolutions that are taken here find way or find route towards Parliament where decisions are going to be taken. So there will be processes that will be followed in order to do that.
Okay, wonderful. So in terms of the other committees that you are participating in, talk to us just quickly about this other committees that you are that you will be participating or attending in this coming week, and then just in terms of maybe from at a high level, some of the themes that we can expect you to engage in representing the South African Parliament. There
will be committees on the sustainable development, the democracy on human rights, the committees on the United Nations affairs, and other committees of international value that are going to take place. And besides that, we'll be having the side meetings as well with other countries where we'll be having bilateral talks in trying to improve the friendship between ourselves and other countries. So those, I'm just saying, the side meetings are also important because they put value to the integrity of the country.
Absolutely. Well, that is where we have to leave it for now. Honorable Ntombela, thank you very much for making the time to be with us this afternoon. We do look forward to engaging even further, just to reflect even more on some of the other sessions, the other standing committees that you will be in attendance at, just to report back to our viewers at home. Thank you very much for making it.
Most welcome. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. That is unfortunately where we have to leave it for now, but we will be back again tomorrow with updates, fresh updates from our entire high-level delegation to bring information to you that is relevant to the transformation of the country. Obviously, all of these issues that are discussed on the IPU platform are also issues that are relevant to the South African development landscape. So we will be bringing you more of that, more insights from the rest of our delegation tomorrow. Thank you very much for staying with us.
Thank you very much.